I lived in Japan for about 3 years, including the time that I studied there. So when I did finally choose to go to Japan, I had to get a working holiday visa. And when I did that, you have to have like a certain amount of money with you to apply so you can sustain yourself. And I didn't even have enough. So like I asked my mom, she gave me money, and then I had that in my bank account. I applied and they were like, oh, you have enough in your bank account. So I got the visa and then gave the money back to mom. So I had like no money, dude. And I went to Japan and I had no job and I had nowhere to stay. Like I booked a hotel room the first night and then like 4 nights at this weird motel. And that was it. And I sold everything that I had in Australia to get some money, including my car. So if I had to go back to Australia, I would have nothing.
So this is Jace Varlet. He is a community manager and a colleague of mine at Coffee Stain Studios. We work together both on Satisfactory, which is the game that we're currently producing at the studio, and we've also made a bunch of videos together on Coffee Stain's YouTube channel, which Jace is managing. So Jace is originally from Australia, but his game dev career started in Japan, of all places, after having moved there with no money and with nothing but the hopes of breaking into the industry, which is kind of nuts.
I was born in a town called Blacktown, which I didn't find the irony of until a few years ago. Yeah, it's like west of Sydney in Australia, and then I spent 12 years in Sydney. I went to school in a town called St. Mary's, and then I moved to school in a town called Mount Druitt. That was in Sydney. Both of those areas are incredibly scary and dangerous places. There was like a kid nearby who used to go to my school. He was murdered. And there was another kid in my school who was murdered. And like in the other town, buses had to stop after like 6 p.m. because bus drivers are getting stabbed and their money stolen. Like, it was a fucking scary place to grow up. But then after like the 12 years, and then I moved to Brisbane, it was much nicer where I lived. Like kids could just walk around the streets and walk to school. Everything was chill. The earliest game that I remember playing is like back on the Atari. So I played Pole Position and Burger Time, things like that. I can also remember playing Alex the Kid on the Sega Mega Drive. I remember like them centers where there were a lot of different games. There's arcade machines. There's also the basketball and the hoop thingy. It's just a regular like arcade thing. Couldn't go to them much because it was too dangerous.
Really?
Yeah.
People get stabbed.
Yeah, probably for your tokens, man, so that they can get a little plush. The game that had the biggest impact on my, like in my early years, would probably be Final Fantasy VII or Super Mario World. That's the one that really got me hooked. But Final Fantasy VII was the first time I could see that games could have a story and a big world that you can explore, and cultures within a game. Like Final Fantasy VII, you could see that there were different cultures. And that's the thing, that's when it sort of bit me that when I was a kid, I was always like, one day I'm gonna make Final Fantasy X, or something, dumb like that. And that's probably the only ambition I ever had about making games, was those kind of games. That plus Suikoden as well. That's another RPG. So the first memory that I ever had making a game would be when I was around, I think 12 years old, or maybe even earlier, 11 years old. My dad got me RPG Maker for the PlayStation, which I didn't know you could get. And so like I started learning that there, and then I ended up getting it on the PC. And I didn't realize at the time, but I was learning some programming like switches, which are just booleans on or off, and then some variables, and I didn't realize that. And I didn't really know how to use variables very well. And so for displaying the health of your characters, I had 1,000 if statements. So it's like, if it's 0, show 0. If it's 1, show 1. Yeah, and I went through and hand-did every single one.
I just want to state for the record that RPG Maker is the fucking shit.
Yeah, it's good.
So good.
Yeah, so there was this it was actually this really, really early like dice game, and I think it was a board game as well. Like I can't quite remember that I made, and it was these little dice that I made out of paper that I cut, and then I folded them up into like dice, and I put sticky tape around every single side to have like the dice hold still. But before it, like I wrote like all these things like fire spells and whatever else on every side, and I don't remember the rules, but you would roll them, and then whatever popped up, you would do it. And so I don't know how young I was there. I'm pretty sure maybe it was even younger than 12. I'm not quite sure. I realized I wanted to work with games at when I was about 19, because up until that point, it never really dawned on me that people worked on games, that they just appeared, kind of thing. Like, I never thought about it, basically. Not really, as a thing that you could do for a living. And so when I was 19, I was in this like really, really shitty place. Like, I finally finished high school, felt like I had to go to tertiary school, some kind of university or college. So I went, I didn't want to do it, I failed, started doing random jobs. I sold grass for a little while, actual lawn, all right? And it was at that point where I was super down, and I just hated everything that was going on. And so I was like, well, what do I do? And I was playing Final Fantasy 12, and I was like, well, I have to do exactly what I want to do, or else who knows what happens. And so I was playing Final Fantasy 12, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna make games now. And then I just started researching where I could study games. I found some places and I started studying. So I studied initially at a place called South Bank Institute of Technology in Brisbane, specifically South Bank in Brisbane, and it was super fun. That was at that point where, you know, I was in that low point, and then I started doing this, and it felt like now I'm really like alive again, and I'm really motivated, I'm really passionate, like I used to be in school before I gave up, kind of thing. And the coursework there was great. They made everyone do everything. So that's where I learned basic video editing skills, animation, 2D art, 3D modeling, like all of these skills, and programming, of course. And I joined it to be an animator, but then realized I hated animation. So, but then I realized that I was really good at programming. So that was really cool. So anyone who wants to go to university to study games, what it does is it gives you some kind of direction. It just says, this is a programming language and how a programming language works. This is AI and how AI works. And you got to take that and go and do something with it yourself.
So you mentioned you sold grass.
Yeah.
Like, where?
You want to hit?
What job? You want to get a hit on this lawn?
It pulls on the camera and I'll give you something cool. Boy. So I sold grass. I did data entry at a milk company. I was a marketing manager assistant. Worked as a web developer a lot. Did a lot of freelance as a web developer as well. Then I worked as a software developer at a company called Ardent Leisure, who owned a bunch of different really big like amusement attractions. And so I worked at one theme park on the Gold Coast, and it was cool because we would work and program stuff, and then at lunchtime just go on rides because we were literally in the theme park. So that was really fun. My longest held job to this day is fish and chips. I worked at a fish and chip shop. That was my first job, and it was so good. I actually really enjoyed that job, and I could go back and do it again. Maybe not like permanently, but I could like go back and be like, can I work for a week? What I used to do, there was a bowling alley next door, and my friend used to work in the back of the bowling alley, like managing the alleys and the machines if they break or whatever. And so what I would do is after work is we'd just get like a bunch of fish and chips and just hang out with him and watch TV behind the lanes of the bowling alley, just eat fish and chips. Good memories, man, good memories. The reason I moved away from Australia is I was looking for game dev jobs. I was working a software development job, and I was getting frustrated again, like back when I was 19, and I said that I'm gonna do what I want, or who knows. I was again not doing what I wanted, and I was getting very, very frustrated. I applied to a bunch of game development studios. There wasn't that much in Australia. They all started closing down at that time. I'm not sure why. But then there was one point when, this is ironic, I applied to THQ, right? And then I got an interview for I think a game tester role. And so I went there to the studio, and I was just out front, and they called me, and then they said, the person who was going to interview you is sick today. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, I'll come. And she's like, can you come back tomorrow? I'm like, yeah, sure. So I went back home, and the very next day, THQ had closed down completely. And I was like, God fucking damn it. So there was at that point, I'm like, I'm out of here. I'm going somewhere where I can find work, and Japan had a lot of work there. And for that to make sense as well, when I was studying, I went on a study abroad to Japan. So like I was somewhat familiar, I had friends there. So when I did finally choose to go to Japan, I had to get a working holiday visa. And when I did that, you have to have like a certain amount of money with you to apply so you can sustain yourself. And I didn't even have enough. So like I asked my mom, she gave me money, and then I had that in my bank account. I applied and they were like, oh, you have enough in your bank account. So I got the visa and then gave the money back to my mom. So I had like no money, dude. And I went to Japan and I had no job and I had nowhere to stay. Like I booked a hotel room the first night and then like 4 nights at this weird motel. And that was it. And I sold everything that I had in Australia to get some money, including my car. So if I had to go back to Australia, I would have nothing. And through various weird circumstances, like my friend's boyfriend had moved in with her, so he wasn't using his apartment anymore. So then I got to use his apartment. Just weird things like that happened to keep me there. Eventually I ran out of money. I got very low on money. I got to the point where I was living on $1 a day and I would just have a little bag of peanuts. I was very hungry. And then just before I was gonna like quit, like just be like, fuck it, I'm going back to Australia, I got a job. Yeah, as a programmer, as a web developer. Not a game developer again, but it was a job. So exactly 1 year after I moved to Japan with nothing, I got fired from the job before because it's dog shit. And then I had nothing again. I had no money. So a friend of mine, a well-connected friend of mine, got me in touch with someone from SNK. They got me an interview, and I had to do an interview in Japanese with like 4 guys there asking me questions. Scariest thing of my life. And yeah, they hired me, so that was that.
Like an idol fucking...
Yeah, it's a game show. Yeah, that's a no from me. So when I was at SNK, I started working on King of Fighters 13, the Steam edition one. So I started porting the console version to PC. And I did end up being the only person working on that project. So I was like just by myself every day coming in and working on it. And it got better and better every time. I had a producer keeping track of what I was doing. But eventually it was like nearly done. And I'm like, yo, the game's nearly done. Everyone was like, oh, really? Whoa, okay. Well, let's do something. We got some more people on board to finish it off, including my buddy Jim. I want to mention Jim because I love Jim. Yeah, we finished that. And then there was like an open beta or a closed beta, I can't remember, before the release. And during that time, there was just, I remember the first thing when it went out, there was like a major bug in the game and a lot of people were mad. And so I said, oh, we have to say something. This is going to be very bad. And at the time, my producer was just like, say what you need to say. So I did. And that sort of placated a lot of people. They're like, whoa, they're actually speaking to me. And then we did an update again and got better. And they're like, oh, cool, they're doing something. This is like they were hopeful again, you know? And so I ended up becoming a kind of community manager during that period as well. Like my Twitter was the source of information there. I remember on our launch night, right? So we were supposed to all leave, right, on our launch night. But naturally, things were getting delayed, so Jim and I had to stay back and fix some stuff. Everyone else went to the launch party that they booked, right? Like, yeah, fair enough. And so we stayed there, and we ended up having to stay there for so long. And then we launched with a desync issue on network. Like, goddamn it, I quickly found it and had to fix it. Anyway, it was like 11 p.m. and Jim and I were really tired, and so we just went to this little bar and ate some chicken and drank beer by ourselves and didn't get a launch party. That was good. But it was a nice moment with Jim and I. I miss Japan a lot. It's very nostalgic. It's an incredibly charming place. Beautiful country, and I just love walking around in Japan at night. However, I can't live there again. There's so many times where I've thought, I want to leave Sweden and go back to Japan. But then I would just think, well, I would have to work in Japan again, and Japan has insane work hours. And I didn't even have it the worst. It's not a place that I will live again, I think. So I went from Japan to Sweden via King of Fighters in a way. I knew about Coffee Stain for a very long time, and I played Sanctum, and then Sanctum 2 came out, and I thought that all the design decisions they made from Sanctum 1 to Sanctum 2 was really brilliant. And so I would sort of keep in touch with them on Twitter, and I would follow Armin, and I would tweeted him every now and then, so he kind of ended up knowing that I existed. Like, that's what happens with Twitter. And so when we finished King of Fighters, we got invited to go to a conference in Seattle held by Valve called Steam Dev Days. And so I went to that, and Coffee Stain folks were there as well. So I got in touch with Armin and said, let's grab a beer. And he was like, sure thing. And yes, we sort of just hung out throughout the trip. And, you know, getting pizza and beer at 2 a.m. and just doing dumb shit. And so it was just via that we sort of bonded a little. And then a few months later, I just emailed them and said, I'd like to move to Sweden. Can I have a job there? And they said yes. So that was kind of a bit of a dream come true because I specifically wanted to work for Coffee Stain. And I did. One piece of advice for someone who doesn't make games that wants to: don't do it. Just get into software development and get free money instead. Game dev's dog shit. It's a trap. I'm kidding. Put the knife down. Just put it. All right. It could be that don't have an unrealistic view of what game dev is. It's often, you know, people think, oh, it's going to be a lot of fun, and it is. It's a good job, but at the end of the day, it's still day in and day out. You're just tackling problems. Often, it's still just mundane days and office work. It can still be like that, but it still has this creative outlet to it. So I think it's just have a realistic image of it. There's no romanticism about it. Can I describe what a community manager is? Man, I don't fucking know. There's so many different flavors of community management, and then I do my thing, and I have no idea if I'm doing it right. All I do is I interface with people. I try to engage the community. I try to grow it as well. I try to entertain people, and I try to convey information to the community and back to the studio. The way that I became community manager was the studio manager asked me to do it. He said, "Do you want to do it?" And I said, "Okay." And that was it. I think he asked me specifically because I had a YouTube channel and I had some videos there. I also did. There was one of the biggest contributing facts for that is I made a Let's Play of the game, which is also like a tutorial of the game that was supposed to be used to educate people of what the game is, or even how to play it if they were playing it. And he thought I did a really good job with that. So yeah, his idea was to make me a community manager. What I think is important for me when I'm doing community management is it's a personal thing that I fight for very strongly, and I think it makes some people upset and some happy, to strongly maintain the humanity of the studio, myself, and even the people out in the audience. I think it's too easy that the faces of a game or a company just become this weird robot that recites lines, whether they're animated or not, but they're not really themselves. And I don't really like that. And so I try to be myself as much as possible, whether that's controversial or not, whether that's, you know, I have a bi pride flag behind me and people complain about that. I don't care. I'm bi. Fucking deal with it. All right? Do you want information about the game or not? Like, dude, like, whatever. That's just kind of it. And it's the same thing with just the company in general. Like, I want to convey to people that these are just humans who work here, and we worked on this game for years, and they're paying rent to eat and eating food, and they're passionate about this game, and that's what I want to show people. We're not just this like entity that just functions as this one thing or something like that. So that's, yeah, I'm pretty passionate about that.
So this is what Jace does like all day long.
What I get paid for this?
What are you doing there, Jace?
I need to find a good GIF for what I'm doing.
A good GIF, like, is it a specific GIF or?
Yeah, it's a Kristen Stewart GIF.
Oh, okay.
I need to find the right one.
So I'm about to like unveil the biggest trade secret ever, is the fact that like not only you have like a folder of just Kristen Stewart GIFs.
Yeah.
It's fucking amazing, dude.
The reason is because here on TweetDeck, when you click the GIF thingy, right, and you search for something like Kristen Stewart, you get a bunch, but you can only scroll down so far. So you can't check them all out. So the way you gotta do it is you gotta save, and then you add it here. So I got a whole collection.
I think one of the things that people don't understand about community management is how much work happens behind the scenes. So, for example, when it comes to like DMs, I make it a point to try and answer every single message that I get. And in doing that, I'm helping so many people. I provide support to so many people. So this is something, and messages that we get of support. These are all things that happen in private, and no one else sees those things. They probably know that I get DMs, but no one sees what they are. And we get a lot of like really, really good things via DMs. So I think a lot of people don't see that. In another sense as well, that there's a lot of work with organizing things with content creators, or organizing newsletters, or how are we gonna, like, what news are we conveying, or all these things that happen behind the scenes, like a lot of meetings, what marketing things are coming up soon. All of this stuff I'm also involved in. And those are the things that nobody sees. They see the results and they don't see that I did it. It's all really important as well, especially like before the early access launch. There was just so much going on. Things like organizing videos and streams, the Simon Saga story had to end, figuring things out with content creators, trying to figure out the Discord so that we could have a private alpha Discord, creating bots and whatnot. It was all this work that went on behind the scenes. Also with the help of our moderators on Discord, by the way, so thank you very much. But yeah, there's just so much that people don't see. I would say the public-facing stuff is about maybe 50% of the work. Yeah. My proudest moment as a community manager is probably the 100K YouTube play button. I never thought I would see that. So that was really, really cool. Passing 100,000 subscribers. Of course, it's not just me. We made a game, we're a company, we're a team. But I work a lot with the YouTubes, and I feel, hopefully rightly so, quite responsible for achieving such a goal. So, I'm proud of myself. Apart from that, maybe just the moment that I realized that I think I was doing a good job. I've not really had like the confidence in anything I've ever done before to say, yeah, I'm really doing a good job. Like I'm always like, yeah, I'm doing all right. Yeah, we did great or something, but I've never really felt I'm really doing good until I did community management. So that was the first moment in my entire life I was proud of myself. Is it a joke?
We'll never know.
We'll never know.
So, I hope you enjoyed this first episode of the Game Dev Circle. It was a lot of fun talking to Jace and hearing his stories so far. Make sure you check out his Twitter and his Twitch, and if you have any more questions to this gentleman, you can also hit him up on Curious Cat. In fact, most of the questions in this video are actually stolen from there. So yeah, links are in the description and blah 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 blah. There's one more segment that I want to add to this video where Jace talks a little bit about weird things that Swedish people do. But before I do that, we're at that part of the video now where I'm supposed to be all like, oh, like, comment, and subscribe and all that shit. But you know how this works. Like, if you want to like, you like. If you want to subscribe, you subscribe. The only thing that I want to bring to light is that I don't know when I'm going to make these videos. It's going to be kind of sporadic, so it might take some time. And seeing as how YouTube works nowadays with their subscriptions and all, it's extra important that you hit the bell so that once I do upload a video, you'll be notified about it. Otherwise, you might miss out. So that is it. Have a fantastic day, and don't drink and drive.
There's so many weird things that Swedes do, but there's a weird thing that Swedes do when they come into your house for the first time, where they're like, they need like the house tour. And if you don't give them the house tour, they're just gonna fucking take the tour themselves, all right? And for some reason, the thing that shits me off is even though a door is closed, they're gonna be like, I'm entitled to go in this room, and they're going to my bedroom, all right? And like, I could have had like a fucking butt plug sitting out there, like they don't know, they just walk in. Lucky that's not happened yet, or has it? Another weird thing, they eat burgers with knife and fork. That's strange. So pizza's a dog shit here, right? But the really, really weird thing is, and this isn't just with pizzas, this is with everything actually, Swedes fucking love sauce. So you can have a pizza, drench it in fucking kebab sauce, right? Or you go and get like a curry, and you get like 5% rice, pour sauce on it. It's just, What are you doing? And cut.